Welcome to Barnes & Noble today, and a special welcome to Babe Buchanan, former Treasurer of the United States under Ronald Reagan. Ms. Buchanan is here to discuss her new book, Bae and Her Boys, Unexpected Lessons I Learned as a Single Mom. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks very much for having me. I am really pleased to be here, down here in Williamsburg, to talk about this book, which I spent the better part of a year writing. And what I wanted to kind of say in this informal gathering is to give you some sense of why I wrote the book and what my goals were in doing so. But first, let me comment that most of you know I'm a political analyst, I'm a political pundit, been very involved in politics for many, many years. But the book I wrote is not political. It is meant for all people from any different philosophy, any background, and I make that very clear. Basically, it is a book about parenting. And a number of people recently have suggested that I must have incredible insight that I would write a book right at the time when the mommy wars are happening. Well, it obviously had nothing to do. I had no idea that there's going to have these political discussions right about the time my book was coming out. But let me mention that I think this whole discussion about at-home moms or working moms, even to divide single moms and married moms, is such a mistake, because we don't, as moms, we don't need to be divided. We have so much in common. And as I write the book and talk to other moms, when I was raising my children as a single mom, how many moms came to me and said, as we would discuss friends, and they'd say, I feel like a single mom. My husband travels or whatever it be, and works long hours. And so I think what's important is, as I tell my stories in this book, I've had so many people say, that reminds me of what happened when I was raised, something my mom did or something my dad did, or something about how their own experiences. And I have found that when it comes to being a mother, any story I can tell, mothers can match me. They all can match me. They all have their own stories of their kids. And that's what's so fun of the many of the responses I'm getting to my book, is people are recalling those times, these good times, these funny times, these crazy times that they had in their own life. And so what basically the book is, Bae and Her Boys, is a positive, upbeat, entertaining, if I could say so myself, entertaining account of my life as a single mom. And as I write it, I do so with stories, anecdotes, to kind of demonstrate the lessons I learned as I did this, through my kids most often. And I take from those lessons rules. The rules of parenting, I believe, are rules especially for single moms. It happened that I became a single mom, as I say in the book. I was dumped into the world of single moms about 24 years ago. It was something I had never expected. I was raised as one of 9 children, big old Irish Catholic family, and my father was a central figure in our lives. I happened to be one of those individuals, very fortunate individuals, in life, where I went off to college thinking I had the greatest childhood there was, that my family was without question the best imaginable family. We had our own issues, but I just loved the high energy craziness in that home that we had. And so I always expected to be a mom, I always wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to be able to give my kids that kind of really great childhood where they just loved their own home, their family, and that experience that they had in those early years. And there I found myself, with a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and single, and pregnant with my 3rd son, and a single mom with no dad in the home. And it was heartbreaking, as anyone who's been through a divorce knows. But on top of that, I didn't know that I would be able to provide for my kids in the same way that my dad and mom had provided for me, not just financially, but emotionally, and that kind of a structure, that kind of wonderful life. And so I felt this enormous loss for my children, and I had to work through that. As I was pregnant, and it took another 6 months before the baby was born. I had to really look into myself and say, listen, I can't just give up here. I've got to figure out a way to make certain they have this life, that they have something as great as I had. It might not be the same. There's not going to be a dad at the head of the table, but it can be as good. I'm just certain it has to be, because I have to be able to do this. I just have to, for my boy's sake. And I remember my dad, who had come from a broken family. His dad had walked out on them when he was in third grade. And it was, yeah, I always knew that that had happened, but you know, as you're a kid, you think, oh yeah, Dad, you know, single, you know, his mom raised him alone. But he told me when he was probably in his 60s, he had 9 children, he was very successful professionally, very well known in his community, coach of so many teams. And one night I came down the steps and he was just kind of sitting there, and he said to me, you know, I can still remember him. I can still remember my dad. He was a tall man with red hair. And after he left us, for years, I would look for tall, red-headed men in the corridors of his school or in the sidewalks in hope that maybe that was him. When I'd see somebody that might be him, I would run as fast as I could ahead, hoping it would be my dad. And it was just heartbreaking, you know, and I was, you know, a high school or college when he relayed this to me. And I thought to myself, here's somebody it's been over 50 years, and yet he still had this hole in his heart. He still had this angst about what had happened to him. So when this happened to my boys, when their dad left, I thought, oh my gosh, this is brutal. This is much more than we realize, I think, at times. And so that's what made me really say, okay, I've got to compensate for this. I've got to do something. And so my first chapter in the book, I tell my story as I'm telling you now. And what I came to grips with is as I worked through this and realized, no, I've got to, something has to be different. I've got to make certain I can do this. I ran into a friend who I hadn't seen in years, and she came up and I just casually ran into her, and it was great to see her, and I was animated and excited, and how you doing? And she kind of stepped back and said, I feel so terrible to have to tell you this, but you know, I'm divorced, you know, and she felt, you could see on her face, and she said it, you know, I'm such a failure, I feel like such a failure. And it upset me, because I thought, you can't be a failure, you know. You're a mom, you're a single mom, you cannot be a failure. That's the important thing right now. I don't know what happened. It doesn't matter what happened. And so as I write in the book, I think it's so important that if you're a single mom, or a single parent even, to put the past in the back. Don't spend all this time thinking what I should have done, what I could have done, what could have been. It's done. And you have to spend all your energy on what you are now, and be proud to be the mother of your children and to give it everything. That's the key. That's where you can be successful. And not to, you know, to be apologetic or to feel like somehow you can't live up to this role, because you can. And in fact, you have to, because what's at stake, of course, is your children. So that's my first chapter. But as I wrote that chapter, I realized that there was, as I raised those kids, it was so a great concern to me was, where was the encouragement? Where was the message of hope for single moms? Because as a conservative, we have messages for everybody, you know. And quite honestly, so does the left. That's how we do it. That's the political debate. And yet when I saw lots of my friends go to the cable televisions with the latest report on life for children raised by single moms. There's all these reports out there. They've been doing them for 20 years. And they would go out and they'd say, look, here's another report. It proves categorically that children thrive best when they're raised in a 2-parent home. And there's no question. If you read the reports, that's what they say. Nobody denies that. And in fact, the numbers are frightening. And as I would hear the numbers come across the screen and read them myself in the newspaper, you know, the increased possibility of your children failing in school or getting into drugs or getting in trouble with the law, it goes on. Having emotional illnesses, having physical illnesses. The list goes on, and you think, oh my gosh. And at one stage, after I heard one of my friends on television saying how important, how critical a dad in the home was, I thought to myself, all right, what if that's not possible? What do we do? I mean, I felt so discouraged sometimes. I thought maybe I should just serve marijuana for dessert, you know, because these kids are done for anyhow, you know. And I mean, there was no message of, listen, here's what you might do if there's not one. And I would constantly say to myself, surely we have a message for single moms. Surely, because we want their children to succeed as much as we want everyone's children to succeed. We don't want to write that group off and say, well, you know, those 19 million children are up the creek, you know, good luck. And so I really, as I went through those years, I really felt a lack of a message. And it wasn't just from the right, it was from the left as well.